Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. I'm going to issue a trigger warning. If you're a Patriots fan, if you're a Niners fan, if you hate the Seattle Seahawks, get out of here. This is not going to be a good day for you. I'm just going to put it out there. It's going to be a little insufferable today. I am not a gracious winner. I accept the beatings that I take when my teams lose, but when my teams win, I'm going to talk that talk, baby. The Seattle Seahawks are Super Bowl champions yet again. They avenge the loss to the New England Patriots in absolutely dominant fashion. And actually, I also want to issue a trigger warning to everybody who cried, who was like, it wasn't even a good Super Bowl. It wasn't even a good one. I didn't get a good Super Bowl. I'm sorry the Patriots are so terrible and the Seahawks are so good at football that it didn't make for an entertaining game for many of you. I apologize. On behalf of the Seahawks, I would like to say sorry that they were so good at football and that the Patriots were exactly what I told you they were, a group of frauds that were going to get exposed. I'm sorry that I told you all on this show that the Super Bowl was the NFC Championship game. Like, my apologies. I thought I did the best I possibly could to prepare people for this eventuality, that the NFC this season was just a so drastically superior conference to the group of who's-its that represented the AFC this year. And like slight trigger warning to the Bills. Like, this is how, like, you blew it, Bills. Jaguars and Bills. My God, how are you going to sleep watching that Super Bowl knowing that you got to play those teams for this run and couldn't get there? And just let the Patriots show up with Drake May and a bunch of high school students trying to protect him from one of the most vicious group of defenders that we've ever seen in the sport, from one of the greatest game planners that we've ever seen in the sport. The AFC allowed this to happen. So anybody that complains about that Super Bowl, I'm sorry. I'm sorry Seattle's so good. I'm sorry that their general manager is the best talent evaluator in the game, and he just nails draft after draft after draft. I'm sorry that the Baltimore Ravens decided to keep a 65-year-old who couldn't win anything in the playoffs for over a decade instead of keeping one of the greatest defensive minds we've ever seen. I'm sorry that the Minnesota Vikings gave up on Sam Darnold after he won 13 games last season. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to say it. It's our fault. It's the Seattle Seahawks' fault for being just a top-to-bottom, well-run organization that put together an unbelievable football team that kicked the ass of a bunch of frauds who everybody hates, including their legendary quarterback, including their legendary coach who couldn't get into the Hall of Fame first ballot, including their owner who probably is just doing exactly what all Patriots fans are doing today. Oh, we got the 6 rings. Oh, we're living in the past. Glory days. Ba-ba-da-da. That's all you got, Pats fans. It's over. The double dynasty thing that you were trying to do that was insufferable for the last 2 weeks, park it. Drake May, who sees ghosts now? I'll say the kid that's throwing interceptions up for grab and had basically, I think, 6 completions by the time that his team had 7 punts. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that wasn't a more fun Super Bowl for everybody. I don't know what else they're supposed to do. I don't know how maybe Seattle should not draft so many good guys. Maybe the Minnesota Vikings, a Hall of Fame loser franchise, shouldn't just pass on quarterbacks who win 13 games for them. Maybe the Baltimore Ravens should have known who was in their building a little bit better. I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry to everyone who didn't have a good time. I had a ball. I had the time of my life watching the Seattle Seahawks dominate that football game. I barely broke a sweat. I barely even had a moment where I had to worry about that game. All I had to do was celebrate and trash talk my buddy John, a Patriots fan. By the way, I watched with a Bills fan who was cheering for the Patriots. So I don't know what to say about that. Pretty tough representation for Bills Mafia for me at the Super Bowl party I went to. This was incredible. All seriousness, 6 sacks, 3 turnovers, and a TD. It is, and it won't be looked at this way because today it's all about the Patriots. It's never about the other team. It's not about the team from the Pacific Northwest. We got to talk about what's wrong with the Patriots. We got a million different huge pods and big media presences from Boston. So they're going to spend day after day after day coming up with excuses and talking about how this team's too far away and blah, blah, blah. I mean, for 2 weeks, it was nobody counting them into this game and everybody disrespecting the Patriots and guys like me who said, yeah, they're frauds and they don't belong here and that they beat a bunch of nobodies. That was dismissed. But now that they lose, it's all about the Patriots. No, it's about the Seahawks and a defense that deserves a ton of credit, a team that deserves a ton of credit. Again, they're not going to be as legendary as the Legion of Boom. They're just not. They don't have the figures. They don't have the personalities. It's not the same. And there's nothing like the first, right? They're not going to be remembered like the 85 Bears. They're not going to go down as the 2000 Ravens. Like, this just isn't that. But they are an all-time great defense. And again, 6 sacks, 3 turnovers, and a touchdown in a Super Bowl, and absolutely confounding one of the greatest offensive coordinators who has ever lived, a guy who you can say the stage was too big for him, but he was the runner-up for MVP this season. That was an offense that never had games basically like that outside of the Blizzard game all season. They dominated them. It was a coronation for Mike McDonald, but it was a coronation for that defense. And Kenneth Walker gets MVP because you can't give the MVP award to the defense, but that's who won it. I think that there was a case for Devin Witherspoon. He was outrageous. It was hilarious, too, because they were just running the same blitz over and over and over again, and Patriots couldn't adjust. They couldn't do anything about it. But that Seahawks defense, that's the story of the season. They didn't have one individual. This wasn't like the Micah Parsons defense where Dallas goes, yeah, we got one great pass rusher. This wasn't the Baltimore Ravens where they're like, we just have Kyle Hamilton. The Seattle Seahawks defense was great because they were the sum of the parts. They have a deep defensive line. They got a bunch of linebackers who can fly around. They've got a special rookie safety who can play just about every role. They've got cornerbacks for days, and they have a coach that knows how to use them. And so to me, that's the story of the Super Bowl. The second one, and again, congrats to Kenneth Walker. He was outrageous in this game. People were laughing at me in the room, but I said it all game long. He was running like Le'Veon Bell. It was Le'Veon Bell-esque, the way that this guy was just patient, waiting, and then hitting holes. But Sam Darnold, it's the greatest redemption story I can remember for a pro athlete. I don't recall one that's quite to this degree where the world wrote this guy off and he shoved it in everybody's face. Won 13 games with the Minnesota Vikings. Again, a moribund loser franchise that never has good quarterback play. They walked him out the door so that they could play a kid from Michigan that won football games on a bunch of stacked teams. Congrats. Congrats to them. Congrats to me. Congrats to Brady Quinn, who got to take it in, former NFL quarterback, NFL on Fox. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
I'm doing well. Congrats to your Seattle Seahawks. Obviously,
our
a
Seattle Seahawks.
Performance.
You're a member.
True. And by the way, you could say that was my dog in the fight. I was pulling for them in that sense, even though, I know Mike Vrabel obviously played for Josh McDaniels. You always have people on both sides, but never played for New England. So was happy to see the Seattle Seahawks defense showcase just how good they are. And I think the unfortunate thing is for the viewers out there, obviously we didn't get the game we were hoping for. The best game of the entire postseason was most likely the NFC Championship game. Yeah. That was probably the true Super Bowl as far as the top two teams. And I would imagine if you looked at the betting markets right now, those would be the top two favorites to win the Super Bowl next year after what we saw last night.
Yeah, I think that those games next year are going to be the must-see ones, right? Because one of the stories of this is the Seahawks-Niners rivalry is kind of dead. It's over now. The Seahawks are the Niners' daddy. They won in their stadium. They blew them out twice with huge stakes on the line. The Niners haven't won a Super Bowl since 94, 95, like 30-plus years ago, like kind of an irrelevant franchise. Their coach is an offensive genius who hasn't scored a touchdown against the Seahawks in 2 straight matchups. Like, I don't really care about the Niners anymore. That's our house now. That's the Seahawks house. Niners fans basically got to move on. I don't know. Cardinals seem like that's your guys now. It's about Seahawks, Rams. That's the rivalry now. So you circle those games. Niners are just like the same as the Titans. You might as well put them in the same category when it comes to whether Seahawks fans care. But the Patriots.
I love this, by the way. I love you peacocking. You're over here. You're just flapping your wings. You're excited about it. It's awesome.
It's the best.
Awesome.
Buddy, like, can we talk?
Rightfully so.
You mentioned the dog in the fight thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm actually not the biggest Patriots hater. Like, I was not. And that's surprising for a guy whose team lost a Super Bowl to New England Patriots in a horrific way. I had to watch 2 weeks of that Malcolm Butler play. And I tweeted about how I didn't really respect the Patriots run. Well, actually, I didn't even say I didn't respect it. I said Bills fans got to be kicking themselves because of this run that, like, you've had all year over year where Josh Allen's run into Mahomes, year over year where he's run into Burrow, where he's run into and defeated, but still Lamar Jackson. And these guys got to play C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert, and Jared Stidham. Like, it's a kick. And all I got from Patriots fans for a month was, oh, well, we faced the best defenses and the defenses that we faced. And it's like, yeah, but you didn't really score. You didn't really do anything impressive. And then the Patriots brought Malcolm Butler out as their representative before the game. And I immediately was like, I hope you get murdered. I hope you get embarrassed. And it's exactly what happened. But this week, in terms of like winning and having your team win is the sweetest. But watching Bill Belichick and his girlfriend show up in a T-shirt where they're insulting Robert Kraft for being at a massage parlor, seeing Bill Belichick basically make it a statement publicly that he is not a fan of the New England Patriots whatsoever. He feels no affinity for the franchise. Tom Brady saying he has no dog in the fight, doesn't care at all about the 20 years he spent in New England and those fans. He's more of a fan of Clint Kubiak, his new coach. Seeing the Patriots get absolutely embarrassed on a public stage and watching the Drake May hype fizzle out, watching maybe their left tackle of the future, who they took with the 4th overall pick, look like, I think you can already say he's a bust. Like, I don't think he's ever going to have a career. It's sweet, Brady.
He'll play guard. Is what he'll end up playing.
That's a bust.
He'll play guard.
AKA bust.
That is...
you don't take guards 4th overall, Brady.
Well, we can get into those debates. If he ends up being a Hall of Famer or a guard, I think you got to get those words. But he's a good player. He's just probably out of position for where he should be at the NFL level. No, all the things that I think you're touching on are part of the reason why there's a lot of reason for Seahawks fans and just the anti-Patriots fans to celebrate today.
What a day.
That is a fan base that has had an incredible run of success. So much so that, Robert Kraft, Bill Belichick not being in the Hall of Fame is become one of the talking points and controversies over the course of a week that's really the biggest week, if you will, of the entirety of the season in the NFL. And that's Super Bowl week. So for all those people out there who want to take their shots and take advantage of this moment, this is it.
I love it.
You go ahead and do your thing, do you, because you've earned the right now to throw it back in their face. With all the things that were said, that was a terrible performance by a Patriots team that, to your point, every single talking point and narrative came to fruition with how that game turned out. And I think the most surprising part for me was Josh McDaniels, who's literally called plays in 10 Super Bowls now, has just not been able to figure out a way of starting fast. 3 points, 3 points in 10 Super Bowls combined in the first quarter. That is it. And the shutout last night, I mean, at that point, you got to start saying we need to go up tempo. We need to throw the kitchen sink at them, maybe some trick plays, because nothing else is working. And I know Seattle wasn't necessarily lighting the world on fire. It was mostly Kenneth Walker running the football, setting up field goals because of how good the defense was playing. But my God, you got to do something different. So this was just a dominant performance by the Seahawks. But I heard you say something at the beginning monologue. It's interesting because some of the overreaction to this win is like, hey, this defense, it's one of those all-time. I'm like, hold on for a second. Did people forget how good the Seahawks defense was when they beat Denver? A Peyton Manning-led offense that was arguably one of the greatest we've ever seen. Like, if you want to throw in the greatest show on turf, okay, go ahead and do so. Go back and look at those numbers from that Denver Broncos team that year. Like, that was the talking point of that Super Bowl matchup, and it was never close, never a ball game. like this thing, I don't want to say it was really ever felt like New England had a chance, but it didn't feel like they were completely out of it until you got into more later third quarter, fourth quarter, where the game got away from them.
So I don't think that they call themselves the MOB. They're not
Right.
going to be compared to the Legion of Boom in terms of the spectacular talent of the group. They're just not. I don't think that. For me, like I watch both of them, and granted, different phases of my life. There's nothing quite like your first, So that
Yeah.
defense is just always going to be special, and it had more name brand value. But I do think that they're not going to go down as an all-time great defense. Like they're just not, and especially considering,
Well, they will if they get back to a Super Bowl next
yeah,
year and win it again, and if they look like how they. And here's the thing: I'd say you want to call it talent. I think the most accurate way I would portray it is the difference in style, right? We kind of talked about this in the past. Seattle was so much more of like a post high safety zone. This is what they do, man-to-man
mhm,
defense. And then you saw last night, like the variety of coverage looks and blitzes and pressures and things that Seattle does under Mike McDonald, which are different. And so
mhm,
you mentioned in your open monologue, like the sum of their parts. I think they have some superstars on this team. I don't think you're ever going to get anyone who's going to be as outspoken as
no,
Richard Sherman. I
no,
don't think you're going to find someone who can hit the way Cam Chancellor did in this era of the
yep,
NFL, where they don't just allow that
no,
quite as much, right? So I do think there's some superstars in the making there, especially if they win two in a row to make that case. To me, it's more of just I think the scheme because of how good it is that it kind of takes away from maybe just how talented some of the players that are in the system are.
mhm.
Because it was so basic before that you were relying on that talent and those one-on-one matchups, those guys to flat out play fast and win. This is a bit different. This is like, okay, you're gonna have to answer what we're doing schematically, and if you don't have answers for it, we're gonna keep bringing it, like the Devin Witherspoon blitz that you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So again, I think that the Legion of Boom is a one of one situation with outspoken personalities, heavy hitters, and like weirdly, I actually feel like Earl Thomas is kind of forgotten history in terms of like Cam Chancellor highlights play big. You can watch him
Yeah.
jump over offensive lines to try to block field goal kicks. The amount of hits that he had in his career that were just, oh my God, who hits like he put Vernon Davis's career is a hit that he took from Cam Chancellor in terms of what we remember most about it. Like
That,
he,
but that like the hit I remember the most was they were playing the Arizona Cardinals. He was on the end,
yeah,
end of the line of
I know
scrimmage.
exactly what you're talking about.
And there was an offensive
Yeah.
lineman who was pulling, and he literally buckled him.
Yep.
I mean,
Destroyed him.
absolutely buckled him.
Yeah.
And you just don't see that from a safety on an offensive lineman in the
Nope.
NFL. But like it was those sorts of moments that just you don't see that sort of hitting anymore in the
They don't.
NFL.
They don't. And like that's why I got a little annoyed when people started to compare Amanawari with Cam Chancellor. I was like, it's just not the same experience. It's just they're not the
Same
same.
size.
No,
I mean, it's
no,
just
no,
completely
no.
different.
It's completely different. What I would say is like Seattle definitely has blue chip talent. I wasn't trying to diminish those guys. Like Murphy, first round pick. Amanawari obviously
Yeah.
should have been a first round pick. Devin Witherspoon, first round pick. Like they have guys. It's just that they don't have just the personalities the way that first Seahawks team did, where it was like, man, it was Michael Bennett, and like it wasn't even like it's Bobby Wagner.
With Averill and Chris
Yeah,
Clemens.
it's just it's too many guys to try to live up to that. But what I do think is like first of all, they're a top 10 defense all time by DVOA. So take that for whatever you do. Like for me, it doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot. But I just look at the last 10 weeks of the season, and it's 2 Rams games, and then it's just dominant defensive performances. And it's like if you don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback playing at an MVP level with the best weapon in the game in Puka Nacua, one of the sharpest offensive minds to ever coach a football team in like what the Rams have, I don't think that you're going to be able to run up the score on that Seahawks defense. So I just think like that NFC Championship game and how it does become the Super Bowl, and you combine that with the way the Patriots just completely were not prepared to play in this football game. I do think that those two things combine to take a little bit of credit away from how talented and how special the Seahawks defense actually is.
Yeah, and I think there's like some other like bigger picture common denominators too. Not to continue to draw up comparisons to the past Super Bowl team and win,
Mhm.
but one of the things that was kind of preached to me by John Schneider, who was the architect, right, of building this roster out,
Yep.
and this is back when I was there in 2013, was they really looked for guys who they felt like had something to prove. Like that was part of the makeup. It wasn't just about their talent, their skill set, their size and attributes as they looked at from a scouting standpoint. They wanted a chip on guys' shoulders.
Hmm.
And so it doesn't matter if it was Russell Wilson back then, who was too short. Jarrett Sweezy was a defensive lineman who couldn't make it, so they make him into an offensive lineman. It doesn't matter who it is. You can talk about Richard Sherman got drafted later
Yeah.
than maybe you thought he should have got drafted, and how he kind of fit in that system. A lot of those guys, Bobby Wagner overlooked.
Yep.
There was something about that. And in this group, it's kind of similar. Like Sam Darnold, something to prove. Again, you talked about just Minnesota moving on from him. Now, whether that was ultimately up to Kevin O'Connell or if it was up to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who's no longer there anymore. But DeMarcus Lawrence, I mean, you can kind of go on down the line. Leonard Williams, who's got like a resurgence, right? Like all these guys who, maybe it wasn't working elsewhere, but they find a home here and they're able to maximize their talent and ability to become that. I mean, Cooper Kupp kind of, finds his way to Seattle. The
DeMarcus
Rams were kind of done
Lawrence.
with him. Yeah. Like you look at all these guys who very similarly had something to prove, had a chip on their shoulder from someone telling them they weren't good enough or someone telling them that, hey, this isn't working out, we're moving on. And it equates into the same culture and chemistry that I think you had with the last Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl winning team was that, at least from my experience kind of being out there that year, was every single day, when you went out to practice, like you had something to prove because of whatever had happened in your past. And I think they've chipped in a little bit on that again.
So you mentioned Josh McDaniels, and I actually did want to talk about him because I have a question about who you think has the biggest legacy shifts in this game, right? And for me, from a negative standpoint, I actually think it's him for the reasons that you just outlined. Is now we're talking about a lot of stuff of the first quarters, the inability to start in Super Bowls. And he had a chance to win one without Brady and a new quarterback, which my opinion heading into the week was if he won, he would become inarguably the greatest offensive coordinator of all time. Like if you're removing the Bill Walshes of the world, but it's like you're going to compare like
maybe a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Like as an assistant,
right,
which is obviously rare, but maybe you'd consider him a Hall of Famer if he would have won.
Right. I called him the Spags of offense, where it's like you have a clear career where you are one of the best, fringe Hall of Fame guy. We know you don't work as a head coach, but you are as good as it gets when it comes to this. So I viewed him as kind of like the biggest drop-off legacy-wise from this game from the Patriots. I wonder if you have a different guy who you think was the biggest loser, and then we'll talk about who we think had the biggest positive uplift in terms of legacy.
Well, Will Campbell,
Yeah.
if you really want to break it down and put on one player. Now, I wasn't all on him, but the reality is I don't know many players that give up that many pressures, look that overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And you could go back and put that on Josh McDaniels for saying, like, how do you allow that to continue to be the case throughout the course of the game, where you're essentially letting that left side of the offensive line with two rookies that you knew coming into were going to be a mismatch that you knew were going to struggle. How do you let that ultimately dictate how this game goes, where you guys are just incapable of doing anything with the football? So I would say it starts there because there'll probably be a position change for him moving forward. But he'd be right next in line. I think a little bit for Drake May too, though, where, he was one vote away from being tied for being a co-MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And it's his second year. And I know this is his first time through it, but it looked like he was seeing ghosts. It looked like he was having a really hard time getting the game to slow down and not recognizing coverages, not recognizing blitzes. I mean, one of the things that Josh McDaniels does really well, and one of the reasons why we're even talking about him as an assistant, potentially being able to make a case for himself being a Hall of Famer, is what he does pre-snap to give quarterbacks the answers. And I promise you, you saw a number of times, whether it was from the formation and motion or the displacement of a running back or tight end to the outside, there's answers there. Like I'm sitting there watching it going, all right, it's man, it's zone. All right, let's see what the matchup's going to be here. Where's he going with it? Drake May looked lost.
Yeah.
And for that matter, like I know the Seahawks won. Sam Darnold wasn't on his game either. He managed it well, didn't turn the football over. There was a couple close turnover-worthy plays, and some of those came via inaccurate throws, balls that were behind guys. On a couple of instances where really it could have went the other way. So it wasn't great quarterback play, and we can get into that. But I think for Drake May in particular, I think outside of Josh McDaniels, probably Drake May, where a lot of people who casted a vote for him being an MVP after, again, regular season award, but after watching what's transpired to the playoffs, now you're like, oh, that really didn't look anywhere close to what we had saw during the course of the season. Now we're like, oh, they did play a really soft schedule, so maybe that had something to do with it.
Totally agree. So I think that the biggest legacy shifters from a positive standpoint are John Schneider, who I think now enters the Howie Roseman category in terms of talent evaluator that you should respect, and winning with two different head coaches, winning over two different eras, over a decade apart, building the team the way that he did. I think he's a huge legacy winner. But I also think it is Sam Darnold. And to your point about how he didn't play great, I will say this. I kind of disagree. Just from this standpoint, did he make every throw perfect? Like, could he have had a touchdown to JSN at the end of the half if he places that ball a little bit better? Absolutely. That one was a little bit of a miss. He misses JSN wide open down the field, but it's because he's evading what is 3 sacks. He made multiple plays with his feet to avoid Patriots pressure, where he didn't take a sack in his own territory and kill them in a field position game. He made plays. He also had 2 drops from JSN that I thought were pretty egregious. He had another drop from Cooper Kupp in that game. He has 2 spectacular plays from Christian Gonzalez, who saves the game with a diving play to Raheed Shaheed, which is like, is that ball supposed to be better? Is that supposed to be like another yard down the field?
A little more out in front.
Maybe, but it's kind of like right there. And Christian Gonzalez has to but Christian Gonzalez.
But that's what I'm talking about. That's the margins you play with, and that's why when you're talking about the Super Bowl and you're talking about like the Mahomes, the Brady's, the whoever else you want to throw in the
he's not that
conversation. Well, but that's what I'm kind of getting to too. Is like I thought he played that way at that level in the NFC Championship game.
He did.
This was not that.
They didn't need
this was and that's part of it. I think that's part of the reason why I don't want to jump in with everyone else and hammering the Patriots. Hey, they shouldn't have been there. Look, they earned the right to be there.
Sure.
I think if that game starts out different, where Seattle doesn't continually control with the lead, and Sam Darnold feels pressure, it could go a little bit different.
Maybe.
I mean, one of the first throws he makes off his back foot when he's backed up, it ends up hitting JSN right in the hands, but it's between 2 Patriots defenders that could have been intercepted. There was a lot of could have been like disastrous plays that were also avoided by him either holding on to the football or not seeing what was there. And like you can call some of these plays by Gonzalez great. The post that he should have hit JSN on, that to me is more of a drop. Like JSN in that position, because the ball's so far behind, is being more defensive. You could call those drops by Cooper Kupp. They're not drops. Those are balls that are behind, and he's got to put that ball out in front. Otherwise, the defender never gets a chance to get his hand in on it. So the truth of the matter is, like, that's the expectation of a quarterback when you're playing in the Super Bowl. He didn't play great, but he got the win, and that's all that matters. And then to your point, the defense, Kenneth Walker running the football, they kept this game from ever getting to a point where he really felt any pressure. If he did feel some pressure for the most part, he took care of the football. And I think, that's where he's matured and managed well. If you look at his career, what he was back with the Jets, which, mind you, in one season with the Seahawks, he's won more games as a starting quarterback than he did his entire career with the Jets. But that's one of the things where I think he's matured the most, is he never forced the football into spots, feeling like he needed to do something or feeling like he needed to play outside of himself.
Well,
so I think we're on different pages there, because I didn't think he played overly well. I know he was under duress, under pressure at times, but I also think Clint Kubiak did a really good job of scripting up some really easy completions for him off the boots, off some of the move the pocket passes too.
I just think the sacks that he took off the board and some of the plays by Gonzalez, a couple of the drops, and what they asked him to do, like, this is a score effects game to me, where I'm looking at it and saying, I definitely felt confidence in him throughout the game that if they needed to make a throw, if they needed to make a play, that they were going to be able to get it done. But it was a conservative game plan. Like, they have 1 third down where it's like this third quarter of the football game, and it's still a game. And it's like 3rd and 9, and the Seahawks decide to run the football because they're just playing the score. They're just saying, we don't think that these guys can score on us. What I will say about Darnold, though, in terms of the legacy shifter, this is a guy who is known for turnovers, seeing ghosts, turning the ball over. Seahawks championship run, 3 games, 0 turnovers. That's change. That's a legacy shifter. We didn't trust you to not turn the ball over. You won a Super Bowl where you never turn the ball over.
Yeah. No, and again, I think that's the maturity that you've seen from early in
Yeah.
his career to where he is now. You got to learn how to not lose games before you learn how to win games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's some of the lessons that he's learned along the way. Because the New England Patriots, their organization, you can make the case, has been the king for a good portion of some of the Super Bowl wins of just not losing the game,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they're the team that has usually made the smart play, usually has made the right play, or the play that's not going to make a bad play worse. And those stack up over time to equate to wins. So I thought, in a way, he played like a very New England Patriots-esque Super Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
where he didn't hurt the team. He delivered in moments when he needed to. But again, let's not get it twisted. I mean, this was not an incredible performance by any means.
It was an
He
incredible
got the
performance
job
by the
done.
defense and by the running back. I think the running back was great.
And by Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, your running back
Kenneth
was
Walker
great.
was phenomenal. And
he set the pace. He set the tone for the first half. He was it felt like
which by the way takes a lot of pressure off of you as a quarterback when in the first half, he's averaging 8 yards an attempt.
Yep.
Right. Like it's easy to play quarterback when you're sitting back there saying, like, I know right now with what we're doing running the football, like, we're not going to be in 3rd and long a ton. There weren't a ton of penalties, that officials let them play in this game. So it was a game that I think really set up for Sam Darnold to do exactly what he did. I would have been curious to see if the Patriots jumped out to a lead.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the formulas for success for Seattle this year, is getting off the fast starts, scoring that first quarter, scoring in the opening drives. If that would have changed a little bit of the temperature on him and how he's playing.
Yeah. This is the Kanye West, though. I guess we'll never know. I guess we'll never know. Maybe next year for the rest of the league. So Kenneth Walker, there's an interesting conversation around him, which is he's a free agent. And Charbonnet gets an ankle injury. And one of the discussion points, certainly for me as a guy who watches every Seahawks game, was, one, how is the pass protection going to change? And two is, what does Kenneth Walker look like as a bell cow back? He looked phenomenal, right? Like the Rams did a better job in him in the second half of that football game. But if you want to talk about like setting the tempo, it was him as well that staked them to that lead early against them. I don't think he's Le'Veon Bell, but I do think that there were some runs.
No, there's similar styles. I mean, like, it was funny. Like, and throughout the course of the season, I haven't necessarily felt like he's ran that way. And even looking through, like, it was so funny. You mentioned that when you talked about in your opening monologue, the way he was patient, and there's almost this skip step that they use. Le'Veon Bell used it, and then Walker was using it, where they're moving forward, but they're just not moving forward to accelerate yet.
Yep.
And going back through the course of Le'Veon Bell's career, I was curious. I was like, all right, like, how well did he do versus New England? Because, that was kind of his style. If you had to guess, how well do you think he did versus the New England Patriots throughout the course of his career? He played them 5 times, utilizing that kind of running style.
I'm going to guess that it was like almost 5 yards a carry.
Okay, so not quite. It was 4.
Yeah.
And so it's a good average. However, they were 0-5 in those games. Did not have a ton of success as far as winning the game, averaged a little over 75 yards per game in those matchups. So it kind of just funny comparison. As you brought that up, I was kind of curious to look at it and research it, only because it reminded you of that. I actually thought what stood out to me was, and what really sold me in the first half, I'm like, he's the MVP.
Yeah.
Like, don't give it to Myers. I don't care what Darnold does in the second half. There were so many times he was making a guy miss who was unblocked, and they were running into a loaded box, or he was breaking through a tackle at the line of scrimmage or even in the backfield. I mean, it wasn't like those runs came out of nowhere. There were times, honestly, too, where he kind of got away from where the blocking scheme was going to find productivity elsewhere. I'm sure when you go back and look at it, like if you look at the box count, like you're going to say, this is a gap scheme to the right. And meanwhile, he just feels something out the backside that he can beat that unblocked defender and he's going to go.
Yep.
So it was an incredible performance. And honestly, just based even on the numbers, it's a bit understated because his productivity in the first half was that of such that you knew they were going to run the football and try to control the game and shorten the game in the second half and hold on to that lead with the way their defense was playing. So again, it probably could have been worse too. Had they not been so kind of predictable there in the second half.
Well, yeah, and I thought that the Sundell hold that takes away his touchdown at the end of the game was it was a little ticky-tack for that moment of the game and for what it was. Yeah, it was a hold.
It was a hold. I mean,
Yeah.
look, his hand was on the outside. He was grabbing it.
Yeah.
If that was one gap over,
Yeah.
it's not getting called.
Yeah.
Like that. Unfortunately, happened to just play a role in that. It was too close to where the hole was, where the play was. So you have to make that call. But for a game that, well, we have 7 penalties total.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, and then I mean, they let them play. I'm sure that was the narrative going into it. Unless it's obvious, don't hold a flag out. But there weren't many calls in this game, and I think a lot of people were pleased with that.
I was like, I don't know how other people feel about it, again, because I got like a biased look at this game. But to me, like, both teams deserve credit for not taking penalties, because I didn't think there was anything that was like egregiously missed. There was, a couple times
Right.
where I'm a fan. There was one ball that was underthrown to Cooper Kupp where he's kind of coming back near the end zone. And I thought the defender got there a little early. But on those plays, I'm like, I actually don't really,
Wait,
I don't really like
even
rewarding
Cup's
them.
even Cup's reaction though was kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, I should have had that. Like,
Yeah.
like his reaction almost led me to think like, oh, he doesn't even think that was
Yeah.
DPI.
Yes.
So I was like if you're an official and you're on the fence, like you're not. Like, it wasn't like he was begging for the call.
That's
Like he was
it.
like, I probably should have caught that.
Yeah, no. So I just didn't think, like, out of the penalties, right? Like, we got a block in the back that was obvious on a kick return, where it's
Yeah.
like the guy's got two
Yeah.
hands, lower back. That's like textbook. We had a false start, right? Like, I loved this game from an officiating standpoint, that I never felt like they were involved. Both teams were playing physical. It was great. But the last thing on Kenneth Walker is just, he's a free agent. So with like the Le'Veon Bell piece of this is sort of, if you would have told me he was going to get a monster contract based on the season that he had, I would have been like, nah, probably not. I also actually don't think that he would have returned to Seattle before this, because he was in a timeshare and someone might have offered him more money and also a role to kind of get more carries. Now I feel like that path is sort of a must for Seattle. They have cap space. That's one of the beauties of, if you're a Patriots fan or a Seahawks fan, one of the best things about the Super Bowl is that you're both top 10 in cap space moving into this offseason. I kind of think Kenneth Walker, they might have to hand him what would be regarded as like a dumb contract. I just don't know how you move off him after a game like that.
You could tag him. Yeah. That's still part of this game too, and see if he can do it 2 years in a row. So there's that element of it. I think the tags a useful tool for a lot of franchises, especially with the running back position, because if they have a year like this, you're paying them a premium, but at the same time, it's not a premium compared to what you're paying, 5 other positions like quarterback, wide receiver, cornerback, left tackle, et cetera. So the question really comes down to how they want to allocate some of the cap space they have, because you'd like to kind of push off having to extend those 5 positions I mentioned until you get there. Well, you don't have to worry about it with Darnold. You will eventually have to worry about it with JSN. So there's cap planning that's going into place there. And we can talk about some of the other pieces, obviously Witherspoon as well. So, maybe it makes sense for this year with Kenneth Walker. We'll see where things go. Josh Snyder's found running backs, at different parts of the draft. He tends to be one of those guys who I think feels like he can find value in running backs wherever.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what they end up doing, but tag would definitely be in play. I'm not sure he's going to end up getting a huge monster deal. I don't know, many teams that, are doing that with running backs, unless they kind of fall into that category of, Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, and they're as big of an impact catching the football in the backfield as they are running. And even though Walker has been useful out of the backfield catching the football, coming out of college, that wasn't really his thing.
Yeah.
He improved upon that, I think, a little bit with the absence of Charbonnet, but that really hasn't been his MO. So I think it's gonna be hard to cash in on that huge deal just based off this 1 year performance.
Yeah, to me, the reason why I feel like you got to franchise tag him is, one, I hate the move of trying to add a running back as a luxury piece in the first round early, like with that 32nd, that last pick in the first round. That's like the Chiefs kept trying to do that with like Clyde's Edward-Helaire, and people were like, "Ooh, this is going to be opening up stuff for their offense." I just like the devil, And if you look at their offense throughout the season, it was really nice having that change of pace of, you got the one back who runs between the tackles well in Charbonnet, and he'll probably be back healthy just in terms of the season starting. And 2 is having that change of pace guy who can break a big play. Every time Walker got to the edge, it felt like it's going to be 30 yards, right? And I like having a weapon like that with an offense. The last question is, how much do you think Darnold and the Seahawks are going to miss Kubiak? Because that's sort of the only underlying story here is, You win a Super Bowl, you end up getting the brain drain. I thought Kubiak was spectacular in the first game, or sorry, the NFC Championship game, what ended up being the Super Bowl. I talked to you about how I thought that one call in particular where Cooper Kupp gets held was insane balls for that guy to have. Great play call, great play design. He didn't have to show too much in this game, right? Like it was a lot of run. But in terms of continuity, in terms of Darnold, what is your concern level about having to bring in a new guy to work with him now after this season?
I always have concern with it for any quarterback, even though I would assume the system, the verbiage is going to stay the same. You'd rather have, one guy have to adapt or adjust as opposed to the entire all 11 on offense, right? Like that's how it should work. But, that depends on if that, next play caller is in-house. The run game coordinator is Rick Dennison. He's been in the NFL forever. Do they stay with him and elevate him up, to that position? Do they go somewhere else? Their quarterback coach would potentially be a guy, Andrew Janocko, I think is his name. He'd be a guy that they might, look at because of the relationship he has with Darnold, because of how things worked out this year, how well Darnold played. Maybe they give him an opportunity if they feel confident in it, or they might go, somewhere else and bring someone out of house. So it's a concern to me as far as, do they change the system or do they keep it the same? But someone has to adjust, whoever that may be, the players or coach. And then it's those two learning the personalities of one another. Clint Kubiak clearly had a really strong feel for what Sam Darnold did well. And if you kind of go through that Shanahan coaching tree, right, which played a role in how Kevin O'Connell calls plays, right, from Shanahan to McVay to O'Connell. And then you kind of look at, well, who'd Shanahan play? Oh yeah, Kubiak, Gary Kubiak. Okay, that's his son. Like you start connecting all the dots and go, so the system was very well suited for Darnold to replicate what he did in Minnesota. Is the next play caller going to be from that tree? Is there going to be some thought to that? And then again, staying within that system where he's been able to flourish the past couple of years. So if not, it's a concern. There might be a learning curve there. But I think in general, just having to learn the personality of another play caller, it's not easy either. You have to, as a quarterback, have to earn that equity built within that play caller, whether he wants to admit it or not. Yes, you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but there's still going to be a bit of that like trust factor that has to be built and earned in your relationship with whoever the next play caller is. That's why it might make sense to stay in house where you've got that equity and trust built up with Rick Dennison. He's watched what Sam Darnold has done this year. So he would be, in my opinion, the most likely guy to be able to elevate, or like I said, his quarterback coach, Janocko.
Yeah, but that makes sense because I think what you want here is continuity rather than trying to bring in someone who wants to try to change things up and establish themselves with this group, right? Like we saw even a year ago, and granted it was with Geno Smith, but they went to the college ranks, right? They grabbed UW's offensive coordinator.
Ryan Grubb.
Yeah, Ryan Grubb. And a lot of people were excited about that because he was an exciting name, right? It was like, oh, look what he did in college. And
he threw it all around everywhere.
Yeah.
And here's what I'd say to people that overlook this all the time. You got to be able to run the football in the NFL. You have to have a play caller who understands line of scrimmage play. It doesn't matter if it's a run game or protections. If you can't do that as a play caller, for example, I mean, last night or yesterday's game was a bit different because, New England was so overmatched. There's not many adjustments you can make for Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel at that point. They're just trying to do the best they can with the guys they've got. And clearly that got exploited. It didn't work out. But for Seattle, you've got a guy, again, who's been a part of the run game coordination process. He understands the offensive line play. Like, it would make a lot of sense if it's Dennison. But to your point, could be a big loss. It could be a big loss short term until those two develop that chemistry together as far as the play caller and quarterback. It's a very delicate thing.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how it plays out because
congrats, man. Congrats. You should be excited
Super
about
Bowl
this.
champions and get to bring it up.
I feel no. Honest, are you hurting a little bit today? Hurting a little bit today. All right, because I could hear it a little bit in your voice. It feels like you had a good time.
I had a beer allotment
or 10.
I was like, no, but I going into it, I was like, you get 4 beers. You get 2 each half. That's it.
Okay.
And then you got to be a professional. You got to be able to take notes. You got to be able to stay locked into what's happening. You got to talk about it, right? And the whole show can't be just like, I had a good time, or if it would have gone the other way, right? But then once the final, the turnover that turns into a touchdown happens, it was like, all right, we're having a few. And I watched it like I was in my buddy's like man cave. There's no other way to put it. It's his garage that he's converted into,
Awesome.
like his office and watching room. And he's a big Patriots fan. And everyone there, because he was the host, was going for the Patriots.
It was a Patriots
I didn't
fan.
have a single ally. There was a Bills fan there that was rooting for the Patriots. That was like, I've never seen it before in my life. I was blown away by it. And he kept being like, well, I have money on the Patriots and he's the host. And I was like, so I was against everyone. And so, yeah, I blew the allotment out of the water. I'm a little tired today. Like the allotment shifted throughout the contest.
Yes.
I indulged.
Yes.
And yeah, I was up late watching every meme, sharing. Like, again, let me read this stat to you because this one was my favorite. There were so many good ones, but this stat was like an all-time Hall of Fame first ballot. So the Seahawks defense had more sacks, 9, and takeaways, 4, in 2 games at Levi Stadium this season than the Niners did in their 8 home games combined. 7 sacks, 3 takeaways. Kenneth Walker also had more runs of 20-plus yards, 3, than the whole San Fran team, 2, in that stadium. Like, that's the piece of this that
incredible.
I really don't think people will be able to properly understand is they beat the Niners, the Rams, and the Patriots who stole a Super Bowl from them on a run to a championship. That's the first 3 teams. Those are the dream 3 teams. Like I'll never have a run in my life with any sports team that I root for and you won in the stadium of your old rival who is no longer your rival because again, they're just the Arizona Cardinals. The same thing, same. It's glorious. So yeah, had to go over the allotment and certainly push the bedtime was deeply inappropriate for a guy that had to do a show at 9 a.m. Deeply.
Okay. A few things before I go.
Yeah.
We got to get you to Radio Row next year.
Yeah. I mean, tell my bosses, I've been begging.
Okay. LA, well, I mean, it'll be an easy one for you if you do go.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is Seattle was very well represented. I will say that through the course of Super Bowl week, very well represented. You could hear the presence in the game, but also just around town, a lot of Seahawks fans, a lot of excitement for the Seahawks. And then I'll just say the last thing is enjoy it.
I will.
Enjoy the victory. Keep peacocking around. Make sure you let everyone know.
I will.
All right. So I appreciate it.
You don't have to worry about that. All right, buddy. We'll talk to you probably closer to the draft. Thanks for everything this year.
Sounds good.
See you, bud.
Yeah.
Brady Quinn, our Monday morning insider, former NFL QB, NFL on Fox. And yeah, I'm dying to get down to Radio Row. It's probably not great that my boss is a Niners fan and I keep talking about how Seahawks are their daddy. But again, I'm sorry. I didn't make any of this happen. It just is what it is. Quick break. I want to come back and talk about my lack of Olympic fever. Seahawks are Super Bowl champions. The world has found its balance. Good has returned to the force. Patriots, frauds, everybody knew it. So great. I will say there is something really funny about the amount of congrats texts I received. And I guess that's the only thing you send to someone when their team wins. But I didn't do anything. I just sat there and drank beer and watched my team win and talked a lot of trash to a Patriots fan and tried to give him lots of hugs and show good sportsmanship. He was not very receptive to all of the hugs that I wanted to give. Anyways, Jason Bukala is a former NHL director of amateur scouting and analyst for Sportsnet. He joins me now. What's up, baby? How we doing?
Buddy, listen, I just heard some things come out of your mouth there.
Yeah.
Hugs and support.
I
And
am a
all
hugging,
this blah,
supporting
blah,
guy.
Listen,
Yeah.
I've been on the receiving ends of your trash when you start texting and you
Yeah.
get it. As soon as you get that tunnel vision, it's an aggressive, but very enjoyable sequence in my day. So God bless the individual that you were tearing apart yesterday, because I've been there, whoever you are.
No, honestly, it's kind of tough because I really do it as a sign of love. I would never trash talk someone that I don't have a friendship with, but sometimes I definitely go too far. I get a little too comfy and I get a little too excited, and then I look back on it later. I'm like, damn it, that was Maybe I should have taken that one back. Okay, so one of the things that you and I have been disagreeing about as of late, that you've been receiving a lot of texts, is that your rankings for the draft right now do not have Gavin McKenna 1. They don't have Gavin McKenna 2. They have Gavin McKenna 3. And there's this story that transpired last week, which sent me into a true spiral because I'm a Yukon guy and I need the Yukoner to be a star, where he punches a kid in the mouth at a bar and he gets charged with assault. He gets, there's all these stories getting pumped out there. You basically call me down right away being like, yeah, these charges, some of them aren't going to stick, but it's a big deal because if he can't travel, this is going to be a problem for Gavin McKenna. This is going to be a problem for his draft stock. The charges get dropped. The story that comes out has been now corroborated by multiple parties. And so I don't know if this is like gospel yet at this point, but it seems to have quite a bit of legs, which is that the kid who Gavin McKenna punched was pretty aggressively talking trash about this guy's mom. He ends up throwing a hook. He breaks the kid's jaw. And now, after all of this, I am curious from you, like your vantage point. You talk to scouts. You've been one. Does this actually raise his stock? Now that we're looking at this in like hindsight, hey, he's tough. He stuck up. He sticks up for his loved ones, and he can throw a punch. There's a toughness there. There's a grit there that might be different than other superstars. Like, I'm genuinely curious if these conversations are happening.
Well, I don't want you to get too excited because the way you just positioned that, the conversation isn't exactly taking place that way. I mean, after a game in a local establishment having a wobbly pop, I'm sure that the guys are looking at each other and saying, you know what, like if I was put in the same position, honestly, can any of us here sitting at the table say we wouldn't have done the same thing? And, I guess in those moments, you might find some people that will say, and to be clear, I probably would have too. And I know that sounds asinine to people because he's underage, he's at a bar. I don't know if it's like a restaurant bar, like a Kelsey's or, you know what I mean? It could be anything, but he was put in a position that was clearly uncomfortable. He reacted and somebody else has to take accountability for it. But here's the downside of it. And the upside, of course, is that the charges, as I was texting you, I said, just give this a couple of days, things will change, blah, blah, blah. Now, the worst case scenario was exactly the way you positioned it, which was that now we're, if it stuck, if anything stuck that was heavy, if you will, it would have been a travel issue. It would have been a scholarship issue. It would have been a nil issue for sure. All these things, right? So I'm glad that none of that is going to happen for the kid here. But here's the thing. When you are a star at any level, especially in college sports in the United States right now, and Penn State men's hockey is a big deal on campus, especially with the disarray the football team's been in. So this is a big deal. And there's going to be the bullseye on the back of your coat, if you will, all the time. And you're going to get needled by those idiots out there who either they're going to do it on social media or they're going to do it to your face aggressively as you're pointing out, everybody's pretty much corroborated that. So, but you got to get out of the situation. You got to diffuse it a different way. You got to leave that situation because you just do. It is what it is. It's not going to affect his draft stock, in my belief, going forward. He'll be asked some hard questions about it, but I think that the takeaway on balance is going to be, as a man in those meetings, running a director, if I'm a director of the Florida Panthers, like what would I have done? Honestly, what would I have done? And in that moment, I don't know that I wouldn't have done the same thing. But having said that, I can't put myself in that position.
So it ends up being kind of more of a neutral than more of a negative or a positive.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some owners out there who are really, trust me, JD, behind the scenes, it's very unpredictable from one organization to the next. So, but is anybody going to go past Gavin McKenna because of that at number 1, 2, or 3? I
doubt
would
it.
Be shocked.
Yeah. Okay. So I got a bunch of things for you today, right? Like I do want to talk a little bit about where we're at with this draft because we're heading into a deadline where the Leafs reportedly continue to be sellers, and I do want to talk to you about Team Canada because now we got the lines, which makes it feel real, like we can actually have discussions about the team rather than just hypotheticals. Well, I guess they still are hypotheticals, but at least there's something tangible to it. But sticking with this top 3 right now, when you're putting McKenna at 3 right now, do you feel as though when you're speaking to people that is becoming more of a consensus, or do you feel like you are more of an outlier in that position?
I think at the outset I was an outlier. I think that then it kind of the table sort of turned. Let me put it to you this way. It's a melting pot of opinions. Some teams very much value the big, strong right shot defenseman and Verhoff. You and I both know, talking about trade deadline, you and I will probably get together when, on the day there, and we're going to start chewing the fat about right shot defensemen that are available on the market. And guess what happens? Those guys are worth their weight in gold. People overpay for them, right? So when you can draft and develop a guy like that, that takes on a life of its own. I do think that there's some teams out there that value skill so much that they believe that they can coach McKenna up in some of his neutral areas of his game, if you will. And I have to be perfectly clear here, even since my rankings have come out, especially since before he went to World Juniors. Now, World Juniors, he was okay defensively, but the build up towards World Juniors at Penn State, and then when he returned for his first set of games after Christmas for McKenna, he was beyond average defensively for me. So, above the play when he doesn't have the puck, intercepting some pucks high in the offensive zone that created scoring and goals, to be frank. And so I think there's going to be some people that are now their mind is more at ease with that, and they probably have him number one coming out of their amateur meetings. The thing that I have to digest when I look at all three of these guys is that Stenberg, he's a little bit more out of sight, out of mind for the common fan in North America.
For
right?
sure.
That makes sense. He's playing in the SHL. But he's playing at the top pro level over there. He's scoring at a historic rate. He's being played in all situations, including overtime in the top men's pro league over there. I just want people to understand, and they don't have to agree with me. I'm totally open to the discussion, as you and I have it all the time. But if this guy flipped scenarios, if it was McKenna playing in the SHL and Stenberg playing at Penn State, people would get a whole new appreciation for the difference in the two players right now. And it's not that far off. It's not far enough off offensively for me to discount all the other great things that Stenberg does responsibly, complete player. So that's why it is right now what it is. But we got a long way to go to June, pal.
Yeah, but this is why I like having these conversations with you. One is like you're always open-minded about what's going to happen. Like you don't get stuck in a way. So for me, what I do love about you and a lot of guys like you is that it's like if this shifts over the next couple of months, you're not going to be stuck in an opinion or rooting for the take, right? Like rooting for the idea of like, well, I had this guy first. It's going to be pure evaluation. And I think that this is good stuff because you're right. Most people don't know. Well, frankly, most people don't know anything about any of these guys. Like for me, I've been trying to watch the odd Penn State game, but in totality, in terms of my sports diet, it doesn't end up very high on the list. I get no Verhoff and I get no Stenberg. So I have literally nothing to compare it to. I'm working off of legitimately seeing all three of these guys at the World Juniors. And my only thing with Verhoff was, and again, he's so young and he's being asked to play this role. He looked a little clunky to me. Like he looks a little stiff. For a guy that size, I like it when those dudes that are that big with modern NHL, they look a little bit smoother. I'm curious if that's more of just a World Junior small sample size thing that I saw, or if that's actually a concern with taking him that high.
No, I think that if I was sitting in your seat, I think that's a fair analogy, to be honest with you. And that's why you have to. So I've been watching Keaton for 2 years live, and in high leverage events, i.e. the World Under-18 Championships last year in Texas, whether it was in Victoria last year, now at North Dakota. Clunky is well, let me put your mind at ease if I can. When we drafted Aaron Ekblad first overall in Florida several years ago, Verhoff skates better than Ekblad did at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of that, he's a better skater on straight lines. Ekblad has never been a pure burner, so I don't want anybody to misunderstand here. Totally. But what I would always be concerned about is this. Just bear with me as I go off on a scout speak here. But imagine you're defending the neutral zone rush. Okay, the opponent's coming at you, and you guys have numbers in the neutral zone, so it means that they have to dump the puck in. Teams don't like to do it anymore, but they do it, right? They dump pucks in, and they're going to try and expose the weak side D if they can, the weakest side of the equation, to try and track, because they're going to get the puck first. That's their goal. When you go to pivot and turn, I call it continuation pace. I have no problems with Verhoff. And Ekblad was really good at it too, but when they get to the NHL, it's still going to take time. Don't worry about his skating. He's not going to be the most punishing guy all the time, but he's got length. He blocks shots at Nodak. He does all those types of things, and he can really rip the pill from distance. Like he can really shoot the puck, JD. So it's a sample size. It's somewhat unfortunate, but I do want to point something out, and I appreciate you saying it. I really do. I'm not a content creator when it comes to my draft list. Like I'm not doing it so that I get all these likes and pats on the back. That's not how I operate. I'm doing it exactly the way I would have done it if I was still a scouting director. And it's going to ruffle some feathers along the way. I get that. That's fine. But I'm going to stick to my guns because I've done it for, half my life. And the order is what it is right now, but I'm not the least bit closed-minded. Like Caleb Maholtra, I've got him at 4. That's high compared to a lot of other people in our industry, I guess, like the industry that you and I live in now. But I think Caleb Maholtra's got all kinds of momentum coming down the stretch here, and he's a center. So that's where we start to think strategy, don't we, JD? What do they value? What do teams value at the draft the most? Centerman, right shot D. And then if you can get a really stud goaltender, like a true one, I guess you go there. But you're not going to do that in the top 10.
No. Okay, so my only other Verhoff question, because I do want to hit on these guys, is the edge. When you're that size, do you play mean? Does he?
Yeah, so, well, let me ping pong it back to you a little bit. In today's day and age, today's hockey, how many guys truly play mean? I mean, you and I appreciate the old style mean, don't we? Like we appreciate the Grizzle mean. Well, the Florida Panthers mean, really, in the last couple of years when they've been winning Stanley Cups. People appreciate that. There aren't too many prospects that are buttoned up like that at the top of the table, to be perfectly clear. As a matter of fact, I would say that Carson Karls is way more mean than Verhoff on balance. He's a harder out, physically. But that where Verhoff has the advantage again is with his length and his width as well. Like he just takes up so much space. So sometimes you don't have to be a punisher. I call him a bumper. Like when I do a game report on a guy like this, I call him, he's more of a bumper than a banger. And that's what Verhoff is. But having said that, he will be challenged when he arrives in the National Hockey League. Big guys like that, the veterans in the NHL are savvy. If they see a guy that isn't going to push back physically and he's big, they will absolutely abuse him. So he's going to have to increase a little bit more of that edge to his game. I think he's got it. He's a real good character kid. I think he'll figure that out.
Yeah, no, the only reason I ask it is because on balance, if you're talking about the skill set and you're outlining it the way that he is and saying like, hey, at this age, better skater than Ekblad, who did go first, my line of thinking would be in a draft where you've got 3 guys that are all close to each other at the top, that if you had that right shot D with that size and he did play, even if it was considered modern day mean, that would actually put you over the top. Like more teams would be willing to invest in you and say like, we never have to worry about this part of it. And like, I don't think that this isn't a fair comparison. I'm not really trying to make it this way, but you're a Leaf fan and you're watching Brandon Carlo this season, right? Big defenseman, has like great length, really tough to get around, really tough in front of the net, but not mean. And doesn't have that edge. Definitely more of a bumper than a banger, as you put it. And yeah, there's a huge difference for me at that position. If you can be someone that can eventually strike a little fear in somebody versus someone who is just like more of the Colton Parayko vein.
Yeah, well, that's well said. And it's true. I can't disagree with anything you just said right there. And that's why, I had Verhoff 1 in the fall. He's fallen to 2. He's going to stay in the top 3 no matter what. I believe. I think that's a reality. But yeah, no, if he can present that. Now, here's one other thing I want. I'm not so sure that people know this, but coming back from World Juniors, his first segment of games, point a game as well. Like, McKenna went off with 9 points in 6 games or whatever. Well, here's a defenseman who had 5 points in 6 games, 6 points in 7 games. You know what I mean? So he was right. He was right there as a defenseman, eating up 23 minutes a night. So lots to unpack. These are healthy conversations, and it's right. And I guess I would also say this to you. Because McKenna, so where he's coming to me right now defensively, like being above the play, being in a better position to be stick on puck, those types of things. Because McKenna, despite what just happened last week, he's not going to be running people over in the NHL. Like that's not his job. He's not going to do that, right? He's going to be more. He's going to be more like a Mitch Marner. He's going to be sequential on, and you're going to want a little bit more at times. But I guess I would say to you too, like if he had 10% more of that, then wouldn't that put your mind at ease? Because Stenberg, He has that. He has leverage in the fight. Okay, he has leverage coming off the half wall. He's got leverage around the crease. He'll stand firm around the net and battle for pucks or set up a screen against a big towering pro guy over there. So he does a lot of those other little things too. So I'm glad you brought it up because my wheels are spinning a bit here, and I think maybe that's part of the reason. In my heart of hearts, outside of everything that Stenberg does, I value that too, that extra kind of girth to his game.
You should. And so if I was going to nitpick McKenna's game, right? Like and I texted these thoughts to you before as well, which is like, he is unbelievably skilled. And I would imagine that if you're in that room, right, you're making this decision in the top three, and you put just like the highlight reels on in terms of who's going to change a game for us and who's going to change a power play for us. God, it'd be tough to pass on that talent, right? Just like game-breaking talent, very rare level of talent, very rare level of vision. But two things for me stick out with him. One is, and again, not watching nearly as much as you do, I don't like how perimeter his game is, and I think he needs to shoot more. And I don't like it when a guy listen, he's an unbelievable passer. But is that something, like when you're talking about the things that you want to see from his game, you mentioned the defensive side of it. But yeah, do you nitpick with the offensive game as well, where it's a guy that, like he's great going to the middle on the rush, but in terms of, hey, we're setting up in the zone, where is he going to be? It's a lot of outside.
Yeah. So, this is part of the process that I want you to, understand my process. So I already knew coming in at the Independence State, I had an expectation. It was going to be hard for him to score and produce the same amount. I mean, he's going to a totally different league against older players. And then the defensive side was something I was very concerned about. It's got consistent growth right now, so he's putting my mind at ease. So what's next up on my table here is the games get really hard down the stretch here for Penn State, heading towards the NCAA tournament. It's exactly what you just said. I think the kid can shoot the puck really well. I do. But the problem is that, even at the NCAA level, so at the junior level, especially when you're on the road, Willie Desjardins, his head coach at Medicine Hat, ex-NHL coach, imagine when you are a team comes in Medicine Hat. What do you think Willie Desjardins is doing when the fourth line rolls over the boards? Well, he's putting, McKenna out there, right? And McKenna's going to go against 16, 17-year-olds. And guess what he's going to be able to do? He's going to be able to score from the perimeter and different things, right? But he needs to get between the dots. I think maybe between the hash marks in the middle of the ice might be an aggressive expectation for me right now, but definitely between the dots. So if he works off the cycle, like coming off the half wall, he's plenty quick enough and he can spin off of checks really well. Like he's super agile. Find a way to get a route to a puck, come off the cycle, and do exactly what you're talking about. Now, that's off a stationary play in the offensive zone, but even just pure off the rush, somehow bait a guy wide and come to the middle of the ice more. Those are certainly things that I'd like to see him. He can really shoot it. He really can, but I'd like to see him get in those more high danger areas even more consistently.
Well, I just think like your Marner comparison is actually pretty appropriate for him. Like I just watched the way those two guys play, and I'm like, that reminds me a lot of them. And for Marner, part of the reason why, and we can litigate all, I don't want to get into a whole discussion about like what's fair and unfair in terms of the critiques in the playoffs, but everybody that I talk to that I respect backs up usually the same thing with him in the postseason, which is like he's still got to be able to get to more dangerous areas of the ice. And the perimeter stuff, when the games get tougher and harder, don't come as easy for guys like that. And so for him, I do think that's going to be a step is, hey, proving in those big, tough games, especially in college hockey, can you get to those spots and can you be more of a weapon as a shot? So this draft, Leafs, they're trying to get a first-round pick for Bobby McMahon. They want one because his contract is super cheap. He can fit in with anybody. He's going to score 20 goals as soon as he steps back out on the ice. It might seem like a steep price for everybody, but I do think the Leafs, given just the way that the NHL trade deadline works with draft picks, that they have at least a good shot at grabbing one of those picks. My question to you is, this draft, in terms of the Leafs' desire to get a late first-round pick versus saying prioritizing prospects, is this the kind of draft where you really, really want to have a bullet or two late in the first round or in the early second round?
I'm going to refer to my draft list as we're doing this, okay? Because I feel like I want to be on point for with a couple of guys that you need to, if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you need to acquire as much draft capital as possible. What you're going to get in terms of prospect return for Bobby McMahon with their trade partners that we're hearing or potentially hearing about isn't going to have the same trajectory, JD, as some of these guys later on in the first round of this draft class. It's just not going to happen. Now, Bobby McMahon, let's not forget, 29 years old. I'm not looking it up. I think he's 29.
And so pending UFA.
And pending UFA. So what does that tell you? That tells you two things. And this is what goes on behind closed doors, behind the scenes. So you got a guy that you're going to trade, and the team that acquires him is probably, if all things go well, going to try and re-sign him. We would probably both agree with that, right? Let's convince him to be here if we really, especially if we invest a first round pick. Here's the thing. If you're in Bobby McMahon's camp and you're 29 years old, this could be my only time to hit a really good contract, right? So if he's a 20 goal guy, 22 goal guy, he's big, he's rangy, skates downhill, plenty fast, all that kind of stuff. Is he going to get Kiefer Sherwood? Like, there's some fascinating names out there. He's going to need to get paid in his mind. What's that going to look like? Not sure. But it does have effect on the return, because it seems to me right now the appetite of the day is to allow some of these teams to talk to your player, or at least his agent, ahead of time to investigate the appetite for signing a long-term deal. And if they get the feedback that, I'm not, let's just say if it was the Edmonton Oilers, I'm just spitballing here. I'm not starting rumors. I'm just, if it's the Edmonton Oilers and he's like, well, I'm not too sure. Well, that affects the return. Okay. That affects the return, or affects the appetite for them to even want to do the deal. And if the more risk they take on that he won't resign, well, then now you're looking at a second round pick. Are you understanding how I'm trying to pull that through there? So it's going to be fascinating. I think they're going to get a late first round pick for him. And if they do that, listen, anything the Toronto Maple Leafs do right now, get as much draft capital as you possibly can. They have 4 picks in the next 320. 4, as I sit here talking to you today. This draft and the following draft and so the next 10 rounds of the draft, they have 4 picks out of 320. Brad Treliving is going to do everything he possibly can to get more picks for Mark Leach. And Leachy's only been there a year, their director of scouting. This poor guy is like, he hasn't even had a chance to draft at the top of the draft. So the Leafs need it. Leachy will do a fantastic job if he's given the asset management to do it. Don't worry about the bodies. Get draft capital. You need to insulate this group. If you go back to 2021, I think the draft was, there's 2 draft cycles, 2021, 2022, I believe, or I could have it backwards, 2020, 2021. I'm not staring at it right now, but the Leafs had 21 draft picks, JD, and they were trending to be a very good team, right? A contending team. They had 21 picks. They got 2 players out of those 21 picks. And what does that do? Then you lack that insulation with your group, right? That's what they're doing. They lack the insulation, and then they started farming out draft capital. When you can't insulate your group through that draft process, you start chasing it. And let me tell you something, you chase it for about 6 years, because that's a lot of picks.
Yeah. Well, listen, they need picks. That's very clear and obvious. I think the greater question, though, is coming down to what you're talking about in terms of the strength of this draft in the first 2 rounds. Because the Leafs are at a bit of a crossroads in terms of, one, I don't know if they know with certainty that the general manager is going to stay the general manager, but they're close enough now. I believe they're 6 points out of a playoff spot, maybe 5 points out of a playoff spot. This notion of how deep do you cut? And my argument would be, hey, if this draft is really strong and you feel like you could collect multiple picks, then there is nothing that this team has done to justify not making those moves. Like, of course, you mentioned the reasons why a team wouldn't want to overpay for a certain player. They're taking into the account the age of the player, the term of the player, all of this different stuff. But to me, if you're Toronto, you're obviously not just selling for the sake of selling's sake. Like, if you're not getting any return on an Oliver Ekman-Larsson, per se, that you think is appropriate, then yeah, you save him for the offseason. But teams tend to get way more aggressive with draft picks when they have the certainty of what's in front of them with the season. And we do see first-round picks end up going out the door like candy. And if I'm the Maple Leafs and I view this draft in particular as a materially different draft than one that's coming up the following year in terms of depth through the first round, that's when I start to entertain far more conversations about pieces like Carlo, pieces like Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They become much more gettable if picks in this draft are on the table. And it sounds like what you're telling me is that this draft is not only great at the top, it's deep.
Super deep. And but here's the one thing I want the Maple Leaf fans to be aware of too, that when if you're staring down the barrel of the 25th overall pick, and your option is a second rounder that's going to be picked 36. I'm just spitballing.
Yep.
I can tell you, don't be disappointed in that return, because the difference between 25 and 40, it's not massive. When I start drawing I call them lines in the sand, like my lines in the sand, I get to a point at about 18, 19 in this draft where the rest of, call it 20 to 40, becomes likable, still very likable. I love it. But a lot of I'm not so sure that 40 on my list is that far off from 20 on my list, if that makes sense. So you have to be realistic in terms of who has the draft capital, who's your trade partner, and then the return on that, because everybody is going to get their knickers in a knot if it's not, a pick in the first round. But understand that those guys they're going to be very, very similar. But my counter to all of that I just said, and this is where, these are some of the things that this is why you meet for a week and you write all kinds of things out and you come up with all kinds of strategies. The more draft capital that we can acquire, okay, if you are going to get really aggressive down the road, let's just, Austin Matthews 2 years from now, he's got to make a decision, right? Or sooner. He's got to make a decision. And you don't want to be in the Quinn Hughes type of scenario. You've got Willie Nylander here. I even proposed that I would listen on Willie Nylander, in a piece that I just wrote recently. I'm not saying they're going to trade him, but I want to listen, right? What I'm trying to tell you here is that the more draft capital you acquire, call it late first, second rounders, depending on some of these names you're throwing out here, you can package some of those guys up in this draft class, move up, and now you're going to get you're going to get a star player.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to get a guy that I believe can be a top pairing D or, a top line forward, and that's good too. Like, yeah, it might cost you 2 draft picks to get that guy, but now all of a sudden you've got another Nylander in the fold, if you will, long term, and it resets some things up front. So I'm open-minded with all of this strategy. But the Maple Leafs, listen, the win over Edmonton coming into the Olympic break, the Oilers, like you saw what Leon Draisaitl said after that, before he left for the Olympics, not very happy, right? The Oilers are a shell of themselves for whatever reason. Curious, they are what they are. But the 3 wins, 2 were against teams like, shouldn't we be beating the Calgary Flames and the Vancouver Canucks? Like, shouldn't this happen? So just be realistic about where you are. If this team, compared to teams in the past, when everybody's been begging for them to go deep in the playoffs and they couldn't do it, is this team any better than those teams? And if the answer is no, and you can't beat top 10 teams consistently down the stretch here, of which they've already proven they can't, you have to be realistic. It's a ballsy move, but you got to do it for the good of the future, because there's no draft capital and there's not enough prospects.
I totally agree. I think that if they were to try and basically just sell McMahon and say to the rest of the group, we had to sell him because he's a pending UFA, he wasn't going to sign here and we could get a first, that would be disappointing to me, because you had your chance to prove who you were during that home stretch against the Avalanche, against Vegas, against Minnesota, and against, most importantly, the Sabres. And you failed every single one of those tests. And to me, that had to be the moment where, again, you don't want to take just like a 4-game sample and make that the whole season. But on balance, this whole season has pretty much told you they're not it. And with their need of the prospects that they just do not have, with this draft, as you're saying, deep all the way until 40, with some of the pieces that they have, some older guys and a chance to reset and get younger, I think that if they don't cut the knife deep at this deadline, we'll be looking back on it come draft time saying, boy, what a mistake that was, as the Leafs are on the outside looking into a playoff picture or bounced in a first round if they happen to get in. Team Canada stuff before you go. So we got the lines. And I'm curious if there was just anything in particular, like what stuck out to you the most?
Oh, Wilson, right. Shotgun with Celebrini and McDavid. I personally love it.
I know, how could you not?
With you. Oh, my goodness. So I'm a big Tom Wilson fan. Like, going back to the beginning of our conversation here, like, they don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah, make them mean.
And to be honest, there was a time I thought he was just too much of a wild card. Like, he took so many stupid penalties to benefit our group for the way that. But it's easier to dial a guy back than it is to push him forward when you're a power forward like that. So that line there, that was fascinating to me. And Wilson is plenty fast. I know there was a lot of push for Hyman to potentially get named to the roster as a replacement here for Cirelli or Point, and that would have been fine too. That would have he's been great. I love Zach Hyman. Wilson's faster. Like he's way faster than Hyman is on straight lines. So the coach Cooper said himself yesterday, well, when he was asked why'd you put that, well, you need an F1 on the forecheck. Exactly. Because if McDavid's not transporting it, doing what he does, how would you like to be Celebrini? Lurking, just for a second, right? Lurking. I want to point out something fascinating about that line, just real quick. And again, it's a little scout speak. I'm kind of getting excited about this stuff right now, so bear with me. But
the best.
Celebrini on straight lines, he's in the bottom 50th percentile with and without the puck on his stick and transition through the neutral zone. Surprising, right?
Yeah.
He looks quick and whatever, but he's hovering right around the 50th. It's like the 47th percentile. McDavid, obviously 99th percentile. He's the fastest guy in the league with like Makar. Wilson is like in the 80s. But you know what Celebrini is? In the small area bursts, JD, like those small to get pucks, retrieve, continue a play on, boom, boom, you know, that kind of stuff, pinballing. He's in the 95th percentile. So what you have here is you got girth, you got transition speed, and then you got small area retrieval. You see how I package that together there? And I think it's fascinating. That's the one line that I think stands out. The other one, I mean, Sidney Crosby in the 3-hole. Come on, he's not really. That's not really a third line, right? Like it's. I'm interested to see how Mark Stone. What do you think about this? I'm interested to see how Mark Stone's speed. He's so savvy. He tracks. His routes are awesome. And he finds space. I'm just interested to see where that gallop is in his game, because this is going to be really fast hockey in smaller areas, just by a little bit, but smaller areas.
So my only thing with Stone is I think that the hockey IQ and the compete is at such a high level that you can just put him wherever and he's going to work. Like, I just, in terms of guys I'm nervous about, he's very, very low on the list. Honestly, like, I'm as excited as you and everyone else for that Celebrini, McDavid, Wilson line. Like, how could you not, right? Like, you're getting a throwback big mean guy with McDavid. You just talked about how they all complement each other. I'm not concerned. That's probably too far of a field. But I have less questions about Wilson working with McDavid than I actually do Celebrini. I just wonder if that's a lot for a guy who's 20 years old to be playing what should be the heaviest minutes on the team with that line. Like, you're with Connor McDavid. And I'm curious what the leash is. Like, if he has one bad game, right? Because they did that at Four Nations. It was like Marner, one bad game, boom, off the line. We're going with Point and we're going with Stone. I wonder what Cooper is looking at this group and how he's going to evaluate them in a runway where they only have one real game, the first one. The very first game they play together against the Czechs is the toughest competition they're going to face. Then it's what? The Swiss and the French? I think that's right.
So, and it's so you're to your point. You're absolutely right. What is the runway? There's the runway is zero. It's the Olympics.
That's it.
It's whoever's going. So I mean, it's not. There's too much talent, too much depth. There is no runway here. Is he going to be up for the challenge? What has he done in San Jose? Like, could you and I not sit here and argue all day? And like the two of us like to do with each other, poke each other, and suggest that this guy should be the MVP in the league. Honestly, if San Jose makes playoffs, he's 40-something points ahead of the next leading scorer on the San Jose Sharks. He's going to be up. He's going to be up to the task. He's a pro. He's ready. He's ready.
The only other one for me is they bring Bennett, but he's not in the lines to start. And if I was going to place like one wager down of things that are definitely going to happen, is there's just no way Sam Bennett doesn't play for Team Canada. In my opinion, like, he doesn't end up bumping one of these guys. And so if I guess the thing that I'd be looking at right now is the bubble fellas on this team. Like, if I'm Bo Horvat, you better have a good game against the Czechs, buddy.
Yeah. So the guy I'm staring at is Marchand. Marchand has not been healthy. He's not been playing fast. He's been, he played the last game before. He's been sore. He's been sore. Let's just put it to you that way. The thing with Horvat is that he's such a good alternative guy to have to take faceoffs, like key faceoffs. He's the kind of guy that could win a defensive zone draw as a winger that he's sliding in right now. But he's a centerman. He could slide in, win a draw, change on the fly. Boom, get his own exit change. So he's got more versatility that way. I think if I'm looking at the Bennett thing, that I'm keeping an eye on Marchand just from a health perspective. And on the back end, it's kind of similar to with Drew Doughty, who's healthy, But I thought despite his leadership and everything, this guy's a Hall of Famer. He's a hell of a player, monstrous competitor. But I'm curious again with him because I thought he was surviving a little bit of Four Nations with the speed of the game. So we'll see that. But it'll come down to goaltending, won't it? It'll come down to goaltending. We better get saves.
The worst part about looking at this is like you get so excited looking at the line combinations and saying like, how's anybody going to stop us? And then you look in net, you're like, right, that's how. That's how. Leaky goaltending. That's my other prediction is I think
hopefully
Logan.
not.
Well, I think Logan Thompson might finish the tournament for the team and that he takes the job from Binnington. It's hard for me. I know there's the legend of Jordan Binnington and the big game Binner thing, and it's his net to lose. He deserves it. And I was talking to Versteeg about this last week, how if you look at his numbers, he shouldn't be playing. But you brought him with those numbers, so obviously he gets the net first. But I think his save is like, what, 860 something, like 868. The goals against is brutal. The play has been bad this year. I know it's a bad team in front of him. It's very different playing in front of Team Canada. But to me, that's where the leash has to be altered like real quick. And even if you beat the Czechs, right, but it's a game where you have to score 5 goals and win 5-4, I think you're just going automatically and saying, we saw it, we gave you your shot, and that's it. And it's Thompson the rest of the way as long as he looks competent.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I also think that there's a mindset here that this group is going to challenge their opponents to keep the puck out of their net to the point where they wear you down. And you might see some entertaining hockey, edge of your seat, kind of, oh my God, I wish you would have stopped that one. That was a muffin, and they win 5-3.
Yep.
But they've got so much talent in front of the netminders that they should be able to find a way. But like, the Americans are loaded, different. I mean, they're different loaded. We could be having that conversation, right? Can you imagine if you and I are, let's imagine we're doing this broadcast south of the border and we're looking at the Caulfield not on the team and, like some of these names you start throwing out there, Robertson's. And so I don't know. I'll take the risk here. I think the Binnington thing, though, the Doug Armstrong said in the presser in Minneapolis when we were there that, we just haven't been a very good team in St. Louis in front of him. And trust me, that wears a goaltender out too between the years, It does. So
and he has done enough in the big stage, and like he did it last year at the Four Nations. Like that's a year ago. My hope is that it's his job, that he keeps it, that he runs with it, and that we're not talking about controversy, and that the controversy that we talk about is what you just mentioned, is that, hey, America didn't bring enough goal scorers to take advantage of what was ultimately their biggest advantage, which was the Team Canada goaltending. They didn't have enough guys to put the puck in the net. Let's pray that that's the outcome, and that I get a Seahawks Super Bowl and a Team Canada gold medal, and most importantly, it's about me and Gavin McKenna first overall. Books, you're the man. Thanks so much for making time, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
Buddy, I could have stayed all the way to 11 o'clock. This has been great. Thanks for having me on, man.
Always. We'll talk to you soon. Jason Bukala, again, former director of amateur scouting, and senior analyst here at Sportsnet. All right, quick break. We'll come back and do what we missed with Armin.
Sportsnet 590, The Fan.
It's one of my favorite days at work I've ever had. Sometimes the job is not a job, and the day after your team wins the Super Bowl is one of those days. I'd like to relive this day over and over and over and over again. Armin's here.
Were you hosting, Bunk, last time they won the Super Bowl?
No.
Okay, so that's
I was producer.
Big difference there. You come in.
It was great. It was great, but no, I didn't get to scream it from the mountaintops the way that I get to with this. Yeah, I did enjoy, like, I already got a couple of fans, like Niner fans, reaching out, being like, thank you for the trigger warning. I didn't want to listen to this. I'm not listening to this today. I'm like, I wouldn't want to listen either. Because, again, the rivalry is over between the Seahawks and the Niners. You can't have a one-sided rivalry that is this way. It's just utter pure domination. We won in your stadium.
Does it take one playoff game to switch that rivalry back on? If the Niners
you know what they got to do? They got to win in Quest, and they got to win a Super Bowl Lumen Field. It'll always be Quest to me. But no, it's over. It's done. Like, it's decided. It would take probably generations. It's like Carthage. Like, it's salted. It's the earth is not usable anymore in San Francisco. All you have now is a beautiful power plant. Anyways, what's next? What do you got? You went on a little trip.
Went on a little trip. I went to the Pistons-Knicks game in
Yeah,
Detroit
it's
Friday
sick.
night.
Yeah.
Turned out to be a pretty crappy game, to be honest.
Yeah, whatever.
Couple of starters out. It was a blowout.
Oh, the NBA, they had a couple starters out.
You know what?
Like,
I was
wow.
expecting 2. They had 3 out.
Yeah, wow, shocker. Actually, Pistons were on a back-to-back, right?
Pistons were on a back-to-back.
Yeah, because I saw they lost to the Wizards. And because the Canadian kid, Will Riley, the night before had
going
like,
off a bit.
oh yeah, Will
Great
Riley.
to see. Can he play center? He's 6'9".
He's making some noise. Like the kid was. I watched a little bit of that game because I was like, oh wow, this score is interesting. And I saw his box score and I was like, oh, I want to tune into this. And I watched him drain a couple threes, including a huge one that like basically stopped the last Pistons run. But anyways, you saw these two teams play. But you were you put in the group like you have some big take.
Well, I don't know if I got, you know when you see a reel and then it's like, is this actually my own original dot or am I just like taking this? But I saw a reel basically that said, you know, people who are especially casual fans who go to a game.
Yeah.
They're just overstimulated. There's too many noises going on in the game. So in Detroit, I did feel that a bit where I felt MC was bringing great energy. I'm not trying to hate, but it's like, we don't need to constantly have like noises going off at sports games. Like, is that crazy?
Yeah.
Like sometimes I would just like to breathe and just watch the basketball.
You can focus on the basketball. They're playing music in the background. Like it's not that big of a deal.
They got the music, the noises, the contest, the MC. Like I realize our guy for the Raps is so chill. This MC was like, I thought I was at like a Rucker Park game.
Okay.
At certain points. He was like.
What I would say is there's some validity to what you're saying in the sense of if you're a hardcore sports fan, you're there for the sports and you care more about the product that's there than some of the other people. But I don't know who did this. Like, God, I'm trying to think. I do know the answer. But because like I want to say it's Al Davis, but it's not. It's somebody else. Oh, it's what's his name? Lakers guy, your guy,
Stu Lance?
No, the owner, the
Mark Walter.
No, the former Jerry Buss. Jeez, God, that's embarrassing for me. Jerry Buss is who you have to blame for this as a Lakers fan because he is the creator of having like we need the Lakers girls, we need halftime shows, we need constant promotions that are happening, we need to keep everybody engaged so that the game is the event, the main event that you're coming for, but that there's no point in time during the game where you as a fan are supposed to basically be sitting in silence or sitting just reflecting on the game or not being entertained. Because a lot of people that go to games are just there for the spectacle. So when they see Red Panda, that's the best thing that happened. They didn't care about the score.
Fair.
If the game is boring, there's other things that are attributed. You get to watch people have the free throw contest to try to win pizza for life or a Kia. You know, like that's
fair.
That's what it's there for. What I would say is my only, and this is not even an old man gripe, this has been long-term my gripe, is the game, NBA in particular, during the game, the music is so loud that it's hard for you to carry a conversation with the person beside you. And,
literally exhausting.
Yeah, and that is an element where I'm like, and Raptors games, like everywhere you sit is under a speaker. Yeah. And you feel like you're talking to somebody about the game. And it's better if you're behind the baskets at the Raptors games. Like if you're in those 100 sections behind the baskets in terms of the noise to have a conversation with someone. But if you're like 100s, but close to the concourse where the speakers actually are, you got to scream at people all game long. Yeah. And be like, I like Barnes tonight. He's playing great. Like,
and same thing with Jays when you're up in the Rogers Center. When you're up top, especially.
No, but there's way more down. Like the music's not playing the entire time.
There is downtime,
they don't play music during the gameplay. That's the major difference. Where
you're
it's
right.
Like,
they don't play the music. They are doing a lot of the everybody clap your hands.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
I could do it without.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite one. Everybody clap your hands. That's my top tier one. Yeah, I think that's the best. That can never ever leave for me. That's if I ran the Rogers Center, if I was game ops guy, we'd do everybody clap your hands 100 times a game. Like that's the number one. It works every time. You can't not clap your hands to the everybody clap your hands song. It's so good. No, I think that comparison's horrific.
I think we should leave that one for
I go to a million Jays games. I can't tell you one time that I was like, it's too loud in here.
Too many, like, no?
No, nothing.
I remember me and Sammy actually talked about this last year briefly. But anyways, Saturday night, I don't know if you caught UNC Duke.
I did not.
Dan Schulman's on the call, was on ESPN,
Yeah.
big game. UNC ended up having their biggest comeback against Duke in 25 years. They won on a buzzer beater, what everyone assumed was a buzzer beater.
Yeah.
There was 0.4 seconds left on the clock, okay? Fans stormed the court, but then you could hear on the broadcast, Dan's going, hold on, there might be some time left.
Yeah.
Took a while for everyone to get off the court. There was drink spilled they had to clean up to play the last 0.4 seconds. Duke's head coach said a staff member of his was punched in the face. Now, I'm thinking that was likely like an accidental shoulder. of
Today
someone
on
running
Liars
on.
Who Lie, but yeah.
Basically, he made comments after. He's like, I'm cool with court storming, but this was a little too much. Whatever.
No, you can't do that. You can't say I'm cool with court storming and then be like, but this time when it happened to us, we didn't like it. I hate this conversation. I feel like it's pineapple on pizza of sports is like, are you for or against court storming? It's like, if you're not for, you're a dork, period. Sorry. It rocks. It's one of the coolest things about college sports is that you still have fans who get to storm the courts. Like, this used to happen in professional sports. It's a bygone era. It doesn't feel like when you're at a college game, the cool thing about it is that it's a lot of college students still there. Yeah. And you look at price points to get into professional sporting events now, and they've become a luxury item. You're not going with the common fan to all these games. Why do you think it's quiet in Toronto? It's because people can't afford to go to the games. That's why it was awesome going to the Rogers Center, is because it's like there's so many seats you can get in at multiple different price points. People go. So college kids go to college games, and college kids get to watch once-in-a-lifetime moments, and they storm the court and they have a little fun. And like a drink getting spilled or a couple of seconds like too early on a clock or a Duke coach lying about getting punched in the face should not restrict this. And it would take away one of the last things about college sports that we have that doesn't make it feel like it's pro sports, which is what it's becoming, because now we have G Leaguers playing and like NBA guys who've played in the NBA.
I do like that they're getting ridiculed, though. The college fans are smart.
They deserve it.
Like G League dropout.
Yeah, but 5 years from now, I don't think that's going to be a thing once that's more and more custom. Anyway, it sucks, but I love storming the court, and let that be on record. We'll see you tomorrow.